This week on Waxing the Porpoise, G-Baby and the usual suspect Steve take on the leg-crossing, ice-pick gouging, pre-baked alibi making, single white female having, Michael Douglas crime thriller vehicle, and infamous Sharon Stone smacker, Basic Instinct from 1992. Join us as we take a dive almost as deep as Michael Douglas' V-neck, make a Hail Mary connection to Lethal Weapon 2, and meditate on the puritanical panic espoused by the release of 1995's Showgirls. If you have an ice pick, burn it, and leave it to Beaver.
Sydney, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
Let's wax this cross-legged porpoise.
Chase, don't do that.
You see, we working on his brow chakra. We're just back in the crown chakra.
All right, welcome to Waxing the Porpoise. We are here again, now on episode 52. Tonight we're gathered to discuss the 1992 film Basic Instinct. Hitting on 92 again. This is like a going back to Jennifer 8. This is kind of in that same kind of vein of like this is definitely more of an erotic thriller, but like a crime thriller, whodunit, psychological kind of deal. This is one Steve has obviously never seen. This is one of my favorites. It's got Michael Douglas in it, and Sharon Stone. This was like a star-making role for her. A few other people we'll discuss. This was directed by I guess some would say infamous, because he's got an attitude, an air about him, but the dude who did RoboCop, Starship Troopers, Paul Verhoeven, he's a Dutch dude. He's a kind of an eccentric, a wily kind of character. He also did Showgirls. That's probably his most infamous work and like biggest box office bomb. But he's done a lot of cool stuff, and he's definitely got his own kind of style and aesthetic, especially when it comes to like certain gore effects. Kind of has his signature on it, which we'll get into. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Basic Instinct again, and this it definitely kind of carries on with Jennifer 8. I kind of put this up here with like my three favorite films of this style, like this kind of like erotic or psychological crime thriller with like a femme fatale, although Jennifer 8 is missing a femme fatale, so that doesn't really work in there. But so I put it at like Jennifer 8, this movie, Basic Instinct, and then the third one can be kind of interchangeable. One is Fatal Attraction, which actually also stars Michael Douglas, or I feel like you can slot in like Black Rain, also Michael Douglas. Those three films are all to me like good, like lazy day, rainy day kind of flicks that you can turn on and just veg out on the couch. So
Sounds like you just like Michael Douglas a lot.
I mean, I always like Black Rain a lot, but yeah, the older I get and the more films in his repertoire that I've seen. I mean, I don't know if have you ever seen The Game with Sean Penn? That's a good one, man. He's in that. He's really good in that.
Ghost in the Darkness, obviously.
Ghost in the Darkness, fuck yeah. What else? I think what catapulted him was a movie called Romancing the Stone with Kathleen. I can't remember her name. But the the gal who played Chandler's mom, that's an actual woman.
Yes.
Kathleen Turner. She her and him were in Romancing the Stone. That was like a breakout role for him. It's kind of like an Indiana Jones kind of a little bit more tongue in cheek, but yeah, he kind of like fits this role of like he was in what was the other one? 94. He was in Disclosure with Demi Moore. That's a really good one too. Kind of like the same erotic kind of thriller, psychological whodunit. But yeah, so what did you think of this one?
I didn't really care for it, to be honest.
Really? You didn't like this one?
Yeah, I didn't really.
Damn.
We can get into my biggest issue was the plot in general, not to keep it too broad, without giving away the ending and then working backwards to what my problems were with it along the way. My other big issue with it was Sharon Stone from beginning to end. I found to be really just not good at all.
Really?
I don't chalk it up to fully being, oh, it's because it's an early '90s movie. It's kind of corny or whatever. Because all of the other actors are also in that same kind of early '90s cheesy thing. But her performance, in my opinion, was just over the top, not unbelievable, and it kind of that sort of leads into the issues I have with the plot, where if they hadn't gone back to the twist one more time, I would have enjoyed her performance a little better without getting too into the weeds. We can go over that more in detail later, but it actually reminded me of, I didn't watch too much of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial because it's just really boring and I don't care about either one of them, but she reminded me a lot of Amber Heard. Like, well, visually she kind of looks like her, but also I think she's just a bad actress, like Amber Heard. When she was on the stand, you could just watch her and be like, I don't believe you. And that's kind of how I felt watching Sharon Stone in this. Like, I don't believe you, and I don't like you.
Sydney, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
I obviously don't know her from a lot of other movies. I probably couldn't even tell you one off the top of my head. So I was surprised to hear you say this was like a breakout role.
It's funny you say that you're critical of that exact thing, her acting, because this is what catapulted her, and she kind of rose out of like obscurity. That was like, it's like a weird thing attached to her, because she was like, I think 34 when they made this, and she had been an actress for like 10 or 12 years, and she had been in like at least a dozen or more movies, like not like star making type stuff. She wasn't like a lead, but she was in quite a lot of films, like Hollywood films that were made and released, but this was like the one, that I don't know, a lot of people say she has like some weird kind of curse, because even though this catapulted her to notoriety, it wasn't another 6 or 7 films that was actually like well received. Like, she went on to like star in a string of like 5 or 6 bombs. I think the next one that was like that was looked at favorably, I think it was The Mighty. Have you ever seen The Mighty?
No.
And she's decent enough in that, but she has a really weird kind of acting trajectory.
Was she also really annoying in Casino?
Yes, that was Robert De Niro's wife in Casino.
Yeah. All right. I'm sensing a theme.
I completely forgot it too, but before we get any further, we should introduce ourselves too. So tonight, you got myself, as always, Jim G. Baby.
You have derailed.
And then, of course, we have the usual suspect, Steve.
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole?
How's it going, man?
Just think that would be helpful information, maybe.
In our present situation.
Trade secrets, my boy. Love that movie. Stand by it. It holds up to this day.
Welcome to the Rock. Good old Connery. Okay. So, damn. Dude, that's crazy, because it was so weird going into Jennifer 8. Like, I was like, nah, he's probably not going to like this one. But then to see you favorable on Jennifer 8, but then not like this one, kind of throws me through a loop again. It's another like wild card. Like, I got to rethink some things. But I guess in my heart of hearts too, this one, there's a certain cheese factor in this. But I was curious, what's your take on Michael Douglas in this one? Do you buy him as like the hothead with issues cop, and does it elevate his your liking of him in this? Because he plays the same kind of person. Like, he's in other films where he plays like a fucking hotshot lawyer, or like politician, plays cops a lot and shit like that. I like him in those kinds of roles. Obviously, I got the nostalgia with Black Rain tied to that quite a bit, but I like him a lot in this role too. I think he's got his faults, but he still feels pretty badass.
Yeah, I like him in pretty much everything I can think of that I've seen him in. Him, like everything else in the movie, does not get away unscathed by the early '90s sort of sheen that's on everything. So I can see past that, no problem. I did find his character to be a little unbelievable, where he just allows himself to get entrenched by this Black Widow. Like, dude, what are you doing? You know what is happening, and you're just willfully getting involved. And I get it. He's like, you know, seeking a thrill. Like, I understand. I understand that part of it, that why he's doing it. But I'm like, dude, this I'm having a hard time suspending disbelief as he just allows himself to get deeper and deeper into the web, if you will.
Do you credit that to his ego or his like hubris, like thinking like no matter how deep I get into this, like I know I can just get out because I'm Nick the cop,
Well, I think,
I'm badass? Or is it that is it more that he's just hypnotized by this fucking woman?
I think between his ex-wife who killed herself, his substance abuse issues, which he's obviously fighting, I think he just wants the thrill. Like, he just enjoys the thrill of the
Right.
game, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's a good take on it too. I mean, he is like constantly is like a moth to the flame, and he's super impulsive, as we see on a couple occasions.
and he's really good at following people inconspicuously.
Jesus, dude, that chase scene is just so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I like the location of this too. It's in
Yeah.
San Fran. It was all shot on location, so
Yeah,
I
it
like
was
that. It has that going for it.
30 years ago, so it's like the city still looks kind of clean. If you were to go
Yeah.
there today, it looks considerably different, unfortunately.
I can only imagine. When's the last time you went? to,
It's
like,
been a
catch
couple
game?
years. Yeah. Went down to baseball game. Oh, you know what? No, I think I went down.
Baseball.
It must have been right around the same time. I went down there for work one time to drop something off, and literally I got off the freeway, and at the first stoplight, I looked over, and there was a homeless lady screaming in a cop's face who was just trying to like move her along, and her shit's everywhere. And just looking over, like, yep, we're here. This is what San Francisco is now. Just this poor fucking cop standing there, like, she was in his face, screaming, like, oh god, this poor bastard.
That sucks.
Yeah,
I can
it's a
only
shithole.
imagine. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was never like I remember going as a kid going through like Chinatown and stuff, and like like really like in the heart of downtown, the financial district, and like the smell of piss is like it's pretty full frontal
Yeah,
no matter what street you turn on. And then you have that funky ass the ocean and all the chemicals and fuel and shit, probably like right close to all those ports stacked up and all the restaurants and the seagulls and shit everywhere. It's definitely got its own distinct musk.
yeah. And it's really too bad because it is a beautiful area, but the city's just, they've allowed it to go to shit. It's a shame.
Yeah. But yeah, I like that it's shot there, and you have a couple obligatory car chase scenes where they go down one of these massive fucking steep hills and just case it like just and he's like, I was like, dude, he had a pretty nice Mustang on Wednesday, and then Thursday morning it's just torn to shit. Like
The scene where he's comically driving like up the staircase and the car's just like boom, 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 boom. Like, oh my god, dude. How is this a shortcut to anywhere?
Yeah. It looked so bad, and like I couldn't tell if it was fake, but I also bought it like, yeah, we're just gonna total this car going up these really weird, it wasn't even steps, it was like a couple steps and like a straightaway, like a plateau, and then more steps. So like the action of it going up that hill was like super herky jerky, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh shit.
I will say a couple complimentary things about it that I enjoyed. The first kill scene with the pickaxe or ice pick. It's fucking
pretty
brutal.
intense.
Loved that. And that was awesome. Going into this movie, all I remembered or associated with this movie was Sharon Stone's vagina.
Yes.
And then when the movie started and the ice pick thing happened, I remember, I think my brother got like a special edition DVD that came with like a miniature little ice pick thing. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I vaguely remember that, just additional detail, but knew nothing else about it. So I enjoyed the murder scenes. And I was in on the premise, but then as the movie went on, and it's like, it was so forcibly distractionary. You know, they just kept like, it's like they were holding your head. And they're like, look over here. Now look over here. Now look back over here. It's like, okay, quit fucking jerking my chain around. And it felt like it was relying upon confusion and deflection more than like a really cool story. So I don't know if you wanted to do any sort of synopsis before we got into why I think they took it one twist too far, in my opinion. I guess one little fun fact before that. I also thought, you know, when somebody says like a premise and they're like, well, yeah, you know how blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like if someone's like, well, you know, you always drink Pepsi when you eat spaghetti. It's like, well, no, I don't buy that premise. So whatever you're about to say, I'm not even with you thus far. I thought it was funny when they were like, oh no, it's a perfect alibi that she wrote a book and then also committed the same exact crime. It's like, I don't know, is it? And then later when Michael Douglas confronts Nelson and then they find him dead, they're like, oh yeah, perfect alibi. Why would I kill this guy that I got into a violent physical altercation with earlier in the day? It's like, well, yeah, that's exactly the reason why. That's why people do things they do.
Yeah, and statistics are on our side on this one too, fella. It's like you're trying to shoehorn in this like recent thing that just happened. Like, oh, hey, we got a murder where she wrote a book and then she did it, and then this person was killed this exact same way. Why would she do that? That's like she did it with an alibi in mind. She's not that stupid, you know. And then it's just like something recent that happened, and he's trying to like. Yeah, for this instance too, this applies.
Like a cop sees you drinking in a bar and pulls you over on the way home in your shit house, and you're like, officer, why would I be driving drunk? I was just drinking heavily in a bar. Doesn't this seem like the last thing I would be doing? You're kind of proving my point.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, that is kind of a little bit, I don't know, kind of comic booky about this. But yeah, I think we should do a quick synopsis. I have a little excerpt too that I think will shave some of that, but we open with a dude just getting bludgeoned and stabbed like pretty horrifically. I think one's like through the face, like across the face, into the nose, into the chest, the shoulder, like pretty gnarly shit, blood everywhere.
The one in the face was.
So the one in the face, that's like a director hallmark. Like he's got a lot of like face gore is like one of his like signature things. So like in Starship Troopers, he has a practical effect that he uses when this dude gets shot in the face, and it looks kind of like rubbery. It kind of looks kind of funky. He also directed Total Recall, and a lot of his kind of. Have you ever seen Total Recall with Arnold?
I have. Yeah, I have.
Like some of the practical effects on like the people that live out in Mars on the colonies, and they have like distinct like facial features. There's a chick that has 3 tits.
Yeah.
There's like he that's kind of his influence, and he has it in RoboCop too. There's a lot of funky kind of practical effects. And I mean, that's not the only thing that defines him as a filmmaker, but that's one of them. And I thought it was interesting how he still was able to inject that in this film, which is more of a whodunit and not like a rollicking action kind of flick like the other ones we mentioned. But dude, the other scene that's really brutal is at the end when Michael Douglas's partner Gus gets it
right
off the fucking dude. That shit's super intense.
Yeah.
I always forget. One thing about this, I always forget that he dies, and I always forget the twist, like who did it, whether it was Elizabeth or Sharon Stone's character. But anyway, so yeah, so we have like this wild card like woman who is fucking this dude that was just murdered, and so she's the prime suspect basically, and she becomes an interesting character right away, just with her whole kind of blasé attitude about everything, and like she's like smart, she's the smartest person in the room kind of deal. And so I guess I'll cue up this clip real quick that kind of encapsulates the direction that we're going here with this one.
I love it. She's got $100 million. She fucks fighters and rock and roll stars, and she's got a degree in screwing with people's heads.
You forgot about her degree in literature. She's a writer. She published a novel last year under a pen name. Want to know what it's about? It's about a retired rock and roll star who gets murdered by his girlfriend.
And then they go on to say, guess what the murder weapon was? An ice pick. And so this is the exact same case. So that's where it starts us off. And then she gives her whole, well, yeah, why would I do that exactly the way that I wrote it in my book, you know? So then they bring her in, or no, they have like a round table discussion. And did you notice the main psychiatrist dude, Stephen Tobolowsky? He was from Groundhog Day. Needle Nose Ned the Head.
Yeah. I dated your sister until you told me I couldn't anymore. I didn't notice it. I actually watched this movie with the missus, and she pointed it out. And
Nice.
when she pointed it out, visually, I couldn't see it, but I could hear it in his voice. Like, oh shit, yeah, it is Ryerson.
Yeah, I think he has those like Buddy Holly glasses and the hat in Groundhog Day, and in this one it's like he doesn't have glasses or a hat, and he's got like a full-on beard. So it is a pretty distinct difference between the two films. But yeah, he's got a distinct voice.
Yeah, the voice was unmistakable. And
watch that first step.
It's a doozy.
Oh shit!
Just watched that again the other night. I fucking love that movie.
Dude, we're not too far away from Punxsutawney. I've been floating the idea here. Maybe a couple years we go see the old groundhog. I think it's like a 4-hour jaunt.
I heard recently that I think the town is like 2,000 people, and before that movie came out, it was a couple hundred people that would go to that thing, and now it's 10, 15, 20, 25,000 people.
Yeah, I bet it's a shit show for sure. But yeah, I think it is still a relatively small town. I think it's got to be still like, I think I looked it up not too long ago, like sub 5,000 people live there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what their average now is like on a regular basis that it swells to for old Groundhog Day. But so yeah, that starts us off, and so we come to learn about our main character, to our other main character, Michael Douglas, who is Detective Nick Curran for the San Francisco Police Department, and he's got a past on him. You learn in kind of crumbs as we go along that, and they never go into it fully, but I guess he shot accidentally, like in the line of duty, he shot 2 tourists in the San Francisco area. I'm assuming attempting to shoot, like an armed assailant or something, but they never go into that case or any of the particulars. And then you come to find out later that he may or may not have been under the influence of cocaine while on duty and while he did those shoots. So he's got internal affairs up his ass. Then you'd find out later his wife not only left him, but killed herself because he's such a miserable bastard, and all the shit. I'm sure all the pressure and the spotlight of killing 2 tourists and everything that goes with that and having their life turned upside down. So he's an alcoholic. He's like a thrill seeker, kind of like pushes everything to the limit kind of guy. But he's got his like Florence Nightingale like psych advisor that's like on retainer at the police department. Like they're mandated
psychologist or something.
Yeah. basically has like his destiny in her hands. He's fucking her, and she's a head case in and of herself. And so she's like, you know, scratching his back and trying to keep him out of trouble. And all the while now he's got this crazy oddball case.
Yeah, and he repays
in his lap.
He repays all the favors she does for him by violently raping her.
Dude, that part, it's like, even now, like, because I forget about it, but every time I watch it, it's like, dude, that's so intense. Like, how did they film that? And to fit in a quick piece of trivia here, I guess that scene that that is in the film, they were shooting with actual film, but that was just a rehearsal scene that they did, and the director was like, they got into it, they were so into character about it and everything, and like
they or he.
It's I don't know for sure, but yeah, that's definitely a question mark. But
so when she's saying like no, stop, don't, that was probably like genuine. That wasn't part of the scene.
Well, you could take it how you want, I guess, but I guess they were rehearsing, and he,
okay.
I guess this guy shoots a lot of film, this director, kind of like Ridley Scott.
So did Michael Douglas in that scene, if you know what I mean.
There's some more of that coming up too, like with the sex scene, the first sex scene with Sharon Stone.
Boner alert.
Yep, I got some trivia there too, but yeah, I guess like the rehearsal was so intense, and he's like, they captured like what he was going for the scene, that's what they kept. It wasn't like, okay, we're going live, like, all right, now we're actually doing. That was just rehearsal, and I was like, holy fuck, dude, because that's intense. You know, it feels like real, like he's really like taking advantage of this fucking woman. And even like the after, like the pillow talk is like super tense. Like she's like, you've never been that way before, and like you can tell she seems fucked up by that whole thing. Just before that is probably one of my favorite scenes. So like what happens is, like, I don't know, he's just got a hard on for this case. He's got this new exciting case, just falls in his lap. It looks like he's about to get off the schneid with internal affairs, because this psychologist, her name is Elizabeth Garner, who was played by, this is actually her first major film role, is played by Jean Triplehorn, who I think she does an awesome job in this film. She just gives him like the clear, like, okay, he's good to go back to like active duty. I'm clearing him his like psych eval or whatever. So that's what I took from it. Like, okay, he's finally getting internal affairs off his back. So to celebrate his 3 months of sobriety, he immediately goes to the bar and he's like shooting the shit with his boys, talking about this case, and he orders a double blackjack, which I've never heard of that drink before. It's just whiskey and Pepsi, or whiskey and Coke, I guess, a fancy way of saying it. But he orders a double, and one of the IA guys, who is like all over his ass, he's like, he calls him Shooter. I loved that, like how he mentioned that, like to get under his skin. He's like, oh, Shooter, because he shot those 2 tourists, you know. And so you can tell too, this guy just fucking, he's got Michael Douglas's number. Like, this dude hates this guy. And you'll I don't know if you ever watched Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah, not really, but kind of.
A little bit. Did you recognize this guy?
I recognized him as Captain Grady from Super Troopers, which I've seen no less than 100,000 times.
Yes, that was the easy money that I knew you knew him for. But he actually played at the it was like the boys' like reformatory military school that they always send Malcolm's older shitty brother to. He's like the main commandant or whatever. And he's got some funny shit. It's a funny role. He's got like one arm or one hand and an eye patch and shit. He was also in The Faculty. He played one of the professors. That's kind of his claim to fame and where I knew him from. And then, of course, Super Troopers.
To be fair to Nelson, we find out later that Curran's been involved in like 5 shootings in 4 years, or 4 shootings in 5 years, or something like that. And then he also shoots an unarmed woman who just has her hand in her pocket later. So I think there's probably some fair criticism of his trigger discipline. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean this guy Nilsson's an asshole and he's played it up, but he's not wrong. You know, like he this guy's a fucking loose cannon, you know, like he's got him dead to rights. But one of my favorite parts is he keeps calling him shooter and then he comes up, he orders another double, you know, it's like, you know, 3 months soft sobriety. And what's he say? He's like, "Oh, you better be careful there, shooter." He's like, "That might drive you to drink, or this case might drive you to drink." Yeah. And then he comes up and he
Don't
goes,
work too hard, shooter. Yeah. Might drive you to drink.
Stop riding me, man! I'll kick your fucking teeth in!
I love that part.
Well, at least you didn't overreact.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, you literally just got cleared, like your psyche now. You've been clean. You're doing all the right shit. You fucking just blow into the like the cop bar that everyone goes to, where your internal affairs folks that have been up your ass for however long are right there, and you proceed to just order booze and fucking shoot your mouth off. Like,
and the psychologist is there too, and she's probably thinking, "Wait, he told me he wasn't drinking anymore, and also I just cleared him. So can you calm the fuck down, because you're making me look real bad that I just cleared you and now you're freaking out on a guy."
Yeah, and that's the thing throughout the movie too. It's like she has like some kind of like invincibility cloak, like because she's like, they take her word as like gospel. Like she gets him out of a lot of shit. Whereas like, yeah, if you looked at it that way, it's like this doesn't look good for her at all either. The way he's conducting himself right now, but
well, especially because it seems to be an open secret that they're fucking each other. So how can they even take her evaluation seriously? Or maybe it's just one of those things where it's like, we just need to do this for the paperwork. Nobody cares. Just sign off on it and we'll get back to work.
Yeah, it definitely makes it seem like, they're not inconspicuous about this at all. You know, it's like, how do they not see the blatant conflict of interest if you're really trying to fucking nail this guy? But anyway, excuse me. So I think right around this point is when we get the most infamous scene that carries the most notoriety, is when they call Sharon Stone to they bring her downtown to the police station, which this police station's pretty fucking slick, man. Like it reminded me kind of a Blade Runner a little bit, only like more well lit. Kind of had like a funky architectural. I don't know if I'd go Art Deco, but specifically like the room they're in, it almost seems like a racket club or something, like a sauna room or like a pool room. It's got these weird like light tiles and like the way it's a very almost like bunker, like that interrogation room. Something about that I just like, I really liked that aesthetic.
Yeah, it was weird because in the background it looked like there were markings on the wall, like where you would do like a photo lineup.
Mm-hmm.
But usually they're separated so somebody could stand behind like a two-way mirror.
Right. Yeah, and this was like open air. Yeah,
it was kind of a strange scene, but yeah, I agree. Aesthetically, it did look pretty cool.
Yeah, and it became like a character in the scene because you're constantly cutting from back to front, and then you have the whole stable of detectives, and the assistant DA is there, and they're questioning her, and it's a stark contrast. All these dudes oogling in this one hot ass chick that's like she knows exactly what she's doing.
And it was so annoying. Like even from the beginning when they first go to her house and she's being very like, I don't mean in the traditional way, but she's like provoking them. You know, she's basically telegraphing to them like, "Oh, what's wrong? Yeah, maybe it's like she's basically telling them, "Yeah, I did this. What are you going to do about it?"
And even at the end when she's like, Gus is like, "Hey, we can do this downtown," like the cliched like threat thing, and she's too smart for that too, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll go downtown if you're going to charge me with something. Otherwise, get the fuck out of here." Like she's got that attitude on her, like, I know better than you. Like I'm fully in my element, and fuck you, kind of.
So, sorry to derail. You're back at the vagina interrogation.
Yes, and we have Wayne Knight,
Yep.
aka Dennis Nedry, is the DA, assistant DA, who's like leading the questioning.
Yeah.
I guess so. This came out in '92, so this was probably filmed in 91. Steven Spielberg saw this film and immediately was like, "That's my Dennis Nedry." So that's how he got.
Of all
That's
people,
how,
he's like, I want that guy.
yeah. Which, I mean, I don't think there's anything too crazy, but about his performance. But I think it's just interesting to see him after probably knowing him from like Newman, from Seinfeld.
Yeah,
and
he's like, I need a sweaty, stupid, like nerd or something.
Portly fella. Yeah, so he's leading the discussion, and hit the sweat in the space between the top of your lip and your bottom of your nose and around his face, like exponentially increases throughout this interview, and culminates in there's a scene where Sharon Stone does like her leg, she uncrosses and then crosses her legs, and you can clearly see her beaver. And we have some trivia about that too. We'll bring back around at the end, because there's some conflicting reports on how that went down and then how that was shot and who was aware, who wasn't. But yeah, that was something that, like, there's a lot of films that could kind of fall into relative obscurity or be just okay or decent. And like, this is one of those films where it has something like some kind of marquee like moment or that's controversial that stands out, that I think is like easier to remember or like attach to, like, oh yeah, this is the flick where, and I mean, there's other parts too, like the first sex scene that we'll get into between Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone. That's like, I mean, that's basically porn before there was porn. So I mean, there's a ton of like teenagers that probably grew up like this was like their first porno probably, but like, yeah, her uncrossing and crossing the legs, and you get to see her like full frontal vag in a movie is, not common. So that kind of adds to the like the reputation of this flick,
Yeah. The legend.
Yeah. So they grow her. That doesn't really, it proves to be fruitless. And did you notice the other guy in here that has a bit role? Chelsea Ross? From
I don't know the name. There were a couple guys that looked familiar.
The old pitcher from Major League. Up your butt, Joe Boo.
Oh no, I don't think I remember seeing him in this.
Yeah, he's in it. He plays.
Oh yeah, he's the like the guy who's there on behalf of the mayor
of the
or
mayor's
whatever.
Office. Yeah,
he's a consigliere or whatever.
It's a corporate kiss spot, man.
Yeah. Joe Boo needs a refill. Yeah, there was another guy that I could not recognize, but I'm sure he's been in a million things, and I won't even waste time trying to find him. But I kept trying to place him, but I never could.
Yeah, good old Chelsea Ross. If we had Dick on this episode, he'd go off. He'd be, Chelsea Ross.
He was actually portraying Gaylord Perry, who famously snotball.
Ephus pitch.
Yeah, I will make a quick note that the polygraph scene, which...
Oh, yeah, she's like, you want to take a polygraph? I'll take it right now.
Yeah. I think it's well known by now that polygraphs are not admissible in court, but guess what? What you say in a polygraph test is admissible. So they can't submit results like, oh, he failed or he passed or whatever, but the things you say in that test, they can't admit that. And right. I don't think a lot of people realize that. So if you start like lying in your polygraph to try to cover something up, or even if you tell the truth, all of that stuff can come in. So don't ever take a polygraph, and if you do, just be very careful, because you might think it's not admissible, but your answers are.
Right. And whether or not, like, like the science has come out, like, people can beat it, and, like the efficacy of it and all that. But still, though, if you did take one and you failed it, just like that understanding or that being out in the ether, like, it doesn't look good.
Well,
you
it's like talking to a cop without a lawyer. It can never help you. It can only hurt you. It's not like they're going to look at the test like like in this movie, like she passed, fuck it, we need to move on. Like, no, that's not how they're just looking for something to hang you with. So
right. And one point of the trivia, and I don't know how, I didn't think about it while I was watching this at all because I just was in movie mode and I was going along for the ride. But later on in the trivia, I read that it's like at this point DNA had been, and I know your stance on DNA is not like this infallible thing that we think it is, but I guess at this time, 92, like DNA was actively employed during this time frame, and it wasn't like cutting edge and it wasn't like bleeding edge technology, so it was like at least viable and usable. What was did you think about that while you were watching this? Like, why didn't they just fucking take not better samples, or why didn't they discuss like DNA aspects? Because I guess some people have been like, if they would have done DNA, they would have obviously, there would have been no way to hide that
but done DNA on what?
Well, the argument is that with DNA evidence, the first crime where Sharon Stone kills Johnny Boz, there's no way that
she would not have left something behind.
Right, that would have sealed her fate. But she already says, like, yeah, I did have sex with him.
Right.
But so I didn't go too deep into their rationale, but they just said
if they would have found her DNA on the ice pick, that would have been would have been no other alternative hypothesis.
Right.
Besides, but if they swabbed the bed or whatever, and yeah, I mean, early 90s, it was still pretty young DNA stuff, but yeah, because I think the first one that they used in court was like in 87, I want to say. But
that sounds about right.
I mean, I don't know. I can be a critical asshole, but I didn't I didn't criticize it too much on that front. So
I only bring it up because also, I guess later after the fact, the writer of this film the screenplay, Joe Esterhaus, came back later and was like, yeah, that was a big oversight on my end, is not addressing like the DNA aspect or like, having that be more realistic, like the way it would have been employed in this instance. So, but anywho,
well, I think he might be being a little too hard on himself because, like you said, if these two were in a relationship, her DNA is going to be all over that house. So
right. And then, so I guess from this point on, then we get introduced to Ruby or Roxy, who is like,
yes.
So like, Sharon Stone's bi. She has like a live-in kind of friend that she does stuff with. She lets her watch. She's kind of a wild card in all of this. But then we start finding out more about Sharon Stone's past. So when she was at Berkeley in the early 80s, her parents mysteriously died, and then she got like $100 million life insurance policy or something like that. And then she went on to marry like a famous boxer, Manny. I can't remember who they mentioned him as, but then he died of like something that couldn't be tied to her, like
he got beat to death in the ring.
Oh yeah, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, so.
That part was funny when they're like, do you think she killed her husband? Like, unless she put on an afro and got in the ring and developed a stiff left hook.
Yeah. So Nick, our guy, Michael Douglas, he starts digging into this and he's like full bore conspiracy mode. Like, yeah, she did it. And she's like, oh shit, she offed her parents too. She's this evil. And because then you find out she wrote a book previously that also is like eerily similar to like a child killing its parents, so it's got these weird like mirror parallel aspects as this through line.
Every single thing is pointing towards she is the one committing these crimes and then writing about it either beforehand or after the fact,
right?
And her attitude is just defiant, like, yeah, so what? You're gonna come and get me?
Yeah, and then there's like this weird like mating dance kind of thing that Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone go through throughout this like middle to third, this middle part of the film onto like the third act. And I thought it was funny too, like when the lieutenant is like, okay, like this is the direction we're going to go now. He's like, I want you covering the records when she was at Berkeley. I want you doing this. And then it's just left with our resident loose cannon, Michael Douglas. I want you to track Trammell. Like, I want you to track Sharon Stone. You just stay on her. And like, this is after like some weirdness during the interrogation. She's very kind of like flirty, and like it seems like she's only talking to Michael Douglas. Like, do you want a cigarette, Nick? And like even Wayne Knight's like, it's like, do you two know each other? Like, I just thought it was interesting, like knowing this basically liability you have on your squad of detectives, and you're gonna put him in touch with this other huge wild card in this whole case. Like, just track her, which proves to be, he's just riding the razor's edge this whole movie with her doing this weird, like, are we gonna fuck? Are we not gonna fuck? Are you gonna kill me? Are you gonna kill someone else? Am I gonna bring you in?
Maybe the people in charge happens. Maybe the people in charge were like, well, I mean, he might fuck her, but he's not going to shoot her, at least. So let's just get him over there with her so he stops killing people.
I mean, that's basically the way it goes down. Besides, like, then the side character, I didn't really understand the significance or like why they threw it in, but like this Roxy gal being like the spurned side piece, and she tries to run over Michael Douglas, and I thought that part was pretty intense, dude. He gets fucking washed by this car going like 60 in a parking lot.
I think she was I don't know if red herring is the right term, but I think she was an initial deflection, because when you see the blonde girl at the beginning stab the guy to death,
yes,
it's plausible that it's her, because when he goes to the house, the first house, and it's her, she even says it really dramatically, like, she would never kill him. And the inference is almost like, but I would, Yeah. So there's like a 25 or 30% of the beginning of the movie where I was like, I think it's this fucking Roxy bitch, because she's blonde, tits could be similar, the face you don't see, obviously. They're sort of painting her to be jealous or whatever, and then when she dies, it's like, well, okay, so it's probably not her.
I thought it was funny too, the book that she wrote, the title of the book, Love Hurts. It's got like a knife going through the tea. I was like, that's so fucking corny. So I put a note too. I was like, this kind of feels like a highly sexually charged version of Black Rain.
So I had written down that this is like a shitty, trashy romance novel mixed with like an upgraded Skinamax movie. Like, it was so gratuitous. I'm like, I get it. And it could just be like a product of the time where they're like, oh my God, we can get away with putting a lot of tits and ass in movies, so we're just going to do it. But I was like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because this actually, I guess, not intentionally, but it kind of opened the floodgates for those kinds of Skinamax kind of a mix of like softcore porn, action, just shit movie you can just like ball up and churn out constantly. And that's what they did. They kind of like followed a certain formula. And so, yeah, this was kind of like the pioneer for that I was reading about, that I thought was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, it makes sense. Because if there's like censors or whatever, and you're like, well, what the fuck? They did it, so this isn't as bad.
Dude, I was going to pull this out later, but speaking of censors on this one, so I guess the director, Paul Verhoeven, had to recut this movie 14 times to get an R rating. And as we can probably all guess, there's 4 particular scenes in this film that demanded the heaviest recuts. So get a load of this. So the one with Gus at the end when he gets murdered, that's recut what you saw.
Wow.
The first murder of Johnny Boz, I guess, was way less intense. believe it or not, also the date rape scene between Garner and Michael Douglas early on in the film. That's a recut. And then the first intense ass sex scene with Sharon Stone and Michael Douglas, that was recut. But they actually, what he did with that one is they shot that first sex scene with Sharon Stone over a period of 5 days in anticipation of the censors getting all over him. So he did like every angle, side angle, top, like all different kind of like
this guy sounds like a fucking perv.
Yeah, I think he is. He is. He's a dirty old man for sure. Just based on like, if you watch any of his films, I mean, this is the guy that brought us Showgirls, you know, which was like, you know, I think it came out, it was like it was going to be the first like rated X, and then they pared it down to NC-17, and then they finally got an R rating. But dude, I remember in Corning when they showed the Showgirls at the one screen theater in downtown Corning, population 6,000 people. There were moms and women down there with picketing saying, "Not in our town, take this smut out." Like, I remember it was like a cultural, I mean, I was in 5th grade in 95, so I didn't understand the gravity, but I remember seeing like news reports and like when Showgirls came out, like, this is smut. Like it was another round of like satanic panic, only it was like, you know, puritanical, like
sacrilege.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this guy's got that going for him. But yeah, so he shot that first sex scene over a period of 5 days in anticipation of getting all these cuts. So he had like, you know, this huge overflow to like, okay, we at least have something, you know. And so, but even still, like, this movie's intense as fuck, especially those 4 scenes. And for it's like I can only imagine what was the OG uncut look like of this. Like, Jesus Christ.
I'm sure also, he still has all of those tapes.
Yeah. What did you watch this on?
Paramount Plus.
Okay, and so this was. Do you remember? I watched it on that too. This is the director's cut. Did you notice that when you played it?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I think that's the only one they offer through streaming right now. So I'm curious to see if that's the one you saw. But if it is, so I don't know. I didn't get that far, but I don't know if that director's cut. I don't know if this is that first form without those 14 recuts. So I'd be curious to do a side by side and see, like, you know, if that is true, like what the actual theatrical or the original, you know, home video release differs from that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there were definitely a few times even during the sex scenes. I'm not like a prude or anything, but I'm sitting there watching like, Jesus. How was this advancing the story at all? It just seemed overly gratuitous and just like weird. Like it was weird to watch.
Yeah. Like I think it's one of the few movies that I can remember, like Hollywood pictures, where you see a dude eating a chick out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of funky too, because he's like looking up at her. Like it seemed very kind of like robotic.
And that's how he got throat cancer. So good job.
Yeah, I was wondering because, you know, he's like this big fuck. He's like all about just going down. I wonder if he was like, hey, we should, for the artistic, the angle that Nick's going at, I think he should go down on her to add to the.
Yeah, and I don't think that was a trick of angles. I think it was actually happening.
They said that they used, I don't know what they call them, like sex pads or genital pads. They were used for this because I guess Michael Douglas had a no full frontal clause in his contract for this. I guess the director wanted this to be like one of the first mainstream movies with like full swing and dong. And Michael Douglas was like, nah, I'm good. Yeah. But you do get him like his fucking stately, like, walk out of the bedroom out of the bathroom when he talks to Roxy. And he's just like strutting like a fucking like a rooster. So they fuck finally. They get that over with, and so now he's kind of stuck. He's like in the spider's web. She's definitely a femme fatale. She fits that to a T, and I think this is the part of the movie where it starts getting real twisty, and then they start kind of aiming you dead center at the psych doctor, Elizabeth Garner, and Sharon Stone, and kind of back and forth, because then you learn, okay, Dr. Garner went to school and knew Sharon Stone at Berkeley, and like there's some reports that maybe they slept together when she was a freshman, and one or the other was a stalker. Like we got like a single white female situation going on here. And you can't, it's like one person's word versus the other. Sharon Stone's like, no, she was fucking weird, she stalked me. And then, you know, it's the reverse when he praises the good doctor, and she's like, no, she's like, she's a brilliant like psychopath, you know, like she's trying to frame it a certain way, like, and it turns out she was right, you know, like the whole time. But I think that the way they kind of play it a little Hollywood too, because like especially at the end when she comes out and she's got her hand in her pocket, it just feels very contrived, you know. It's like, but my question to you about this is, this being your first watch, when did you first formulate like, okay, I think this is who did it? Like so halfway through?
I thought pretty early on that Roxy did it, mostly because of how she like said it at the door, like she wouldn't kill her because they, you know. And then as it went on, I was like, yeah, that kind of checks the boxes. And then as they steer you towards Beth, it's like, okay, yeah, I could see this building up. I paused it at one point to go to the bathroom. I was like, fuck, there's still like 30 minutes left. And at this point, they're pointing you pretty closely to Beth. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I can't imagine this is the end. So then when they started vacillating between Beth and Catherine back and forth, I didn't mind that. I didn't mind the kind of the ping pong back and forth. My problem was how it ended on Catherine. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody would dispute that, but at the end they're doing their weird bedtime talk, whatever. She's reaching over. It looks like she's going to kill him, and then she doesn't. They hug, whatever. And then you see the ice pick on the ground, which apparently to me is the reveal that she was the one doing everything all the time, right?
Yeah.
Would you disagree?
Yeah.
Or no?
Well, I always forget. Like this is one of those weird films where I always forget, and then when I get about to the 3/4 mark, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's this crazy doctor bitch. It's Dr. Garner. She did it. That's right. And then at the end, it's like, oh fuck, that's right. It is. I mean, they lead it. They don't come out and say it or show you, but they leave it there with them fucking, and then Sharon Stone's got the ice pick underneath the bed right there, and it pans to it like she's in the next 30 seconds is going to grab it, and Nick's fucked.
Well, and it shows her reaching for it, and then when she comes back, she doesn't have it. So it's like she was thinking about it. Here's why I think that's a really dumb fucking ending. First of all, if she had the ice pick and was going to kill him, all of these other crimes that she's meticulously covered up, that's over. Because she's going to kill this guy in his bed. Everybody knows she's there. This one wouldn't be as easily covered up. One of the other reasons why is when we first meet Sharon Stone, and she's like a really cunty, like combative, defiant, like I didn't have anything to do with this, but you know, she's putting off a vibe of, yeah, I did it. Good luck proving it.
Yeah.
If the movie had ended with she didn't do it, I would have enjoyed her character a lot more, because then she just would have been like a defiant, kind of psychologically manipulative, like, fuck it. If you want to try to battle, let's go. And also Beth versus Catherine. One thing I couldn't reconcile is Michael Douglas's character. So who would have more likely wanted to target him, right? Catherine, who doesn't know him from anybody, or Beth, who they've had this like ongoing affair, but he seems disinterested in her, because she even said early on in the movie, like, I still love you or whatever.
Right.
And then he even burns her later, like, I never liked fucking you or whatever.
Yeah, it's like 10, 15 times, not enough for me to give a fuck or something like that. It's like, ooh.
So she had the motive. to burn Michael Douglas more than Catherine did.
Well, they do show Catherine. She's researching for the book that she's writing that's called Shooter about Michael Douglas, and she's pulled like a ton of research and stuff. So I would throw that back. Like she's been stalking him before. I would assume before she killed the first person or before the first murder of Johnny Boz.
Well, right, but if you presume she's done nothing wrong, then you could assign that to just like normal book research, the same way she hooked up with the lady who killed her husband, the lady who killed her kids, like that.
Right.
That all comports. But with Beth,
she does have more of the
and she knows this person.
Someone.
She knows the lady's books. But here's my biggest thing that. I mean, I only finished the movie like an hour or two ago, so I haven't had a ton of time to digest it. But here's the thing that if they would have said Beth was the killer, that's fine. But when they said she wasn't, the fact I can't reconcile is when they went to Selena's to investigate her dead husband, the cop's like, yeah, he was a cop. He was just going home, and somebody shot him, whatever. So if Curran had been going to therapy about his wife who killed herself and fucking the therapist whose husband had been killed as a cop, there's no way that had not come up before then, right?
Yeah, you would think so.
Because he's grieving, like, my wife, she killed herself, whatever. How could she not be like, I get where you're coming from. My husband was killed senselessly, and we have no idea who did it. So, I don't know. That was kind of the big thing for me. Like, if they would have made Beth the actual killer, that would have made a lot more sense to me. But I don't know.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, it seems like she's got more of like a realistic motive than just being like a thrill killer, which it seems like what they paint Sharon Stone to be. Because, like you said, the doctor, she's got all this trauma and stuff, and she's kind of become codependent. Maybe in a way, or like attached herself onto, and she's got this obsession clearly.
Well, and she could have given the file over intentionally to Nelson. I mean, she said that it was because, whatever, I can't remember what she said. He was going to come harm you, and or internal affairs was, so I turned it over to him. But I mean, you could have easily explained that as another thing that she did to further the plot.
Right. Yeah. Did you notice, by the way, the portly gentleman at Selena's police department who's washing the car?
No.
Do you recognize him at all?
No. Should I?
A character actor, dude? Not really. His name's Jack McGee. He was in Lethal Weapon 2. He plays the fat man who is working on Danny Glover's Murtaugh's addition on top of his garage, and he has that nail gun.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
And then he goes downstairs when they're watching his daughter's commercial, and it turns out it's a condom commercial. You remember that in Lethal Weapon 2? And he's like, oh, fuck. He's like, these guys, all the guys down at the police station, they're just going to give it to me. It's going to be rubbers in my coffee, rubbers in my desk. Because he made this big event, like his daughter is going to be in a TV commercial, but they don't know what for, and they all sit around like it's the Super Bowl, and it's a condom commercial.
I don't remember that. It's been so long.
Dude, you need to flash back. Anyway, he's in the back, and then he's like, I thought it was great. He's like, it makes me want to go buy rubbers right now. And then Murtaugh's is like, and then he's like, hey, Raj, come on, just give the guy a break. Anyway, next time you watch Lethal Weapon 2, you'll recognize him. That is a super deep cut for a character actor. Interesting piece of trivia too. So Michael Douglas' character, Nick Curran, is actually based on a real life, his name's not listed, but a real life adrenaline junkie, former Cleveland police officer that the writer Joe Esterhaus knew during his time as a crime reporter at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Be interested to know who that cop was.
Yeah.
Also, the Cleveland Plain Dealer. What a name. I hate all those cutesy ass. I think one of my least favorite ones that I hear is Seattle's main paper, the Post Intelligencer. Fuck off.
Yeah, that's so arrogant. Screw off.
Let's talk music. Do you like the Elton John song Rocket Man?
I don't like soft ass shit.
Oh, you don't.
Tony Todd. Yeah, dude, and yeah, this is right around the Gus scene. Our homeboy's partner gets fucking hacked by a ice pick. Just comes like right out of the fucking elevator. He doesn't even have time. Hits him like right in the jugular, and he's like, ah, fuck.
So I didn't read too much about this, but one thing I did see was when Curran goes to Sharon Stone's house and the book is printing out.
Yes.
It said that he sees in the book his partner gets killed in the elevator. I did not see that.
Yeah. Wait, you didn't see that while you were watching the movie?
I didn't see that in the printout.
Yeah, it's there. And I remember reading it too because yeah, it's a real quick, it's almost a blink and you miss it kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, he walks into her house, you hear her printer going like cha-ching, 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 and it fucking goes zoom cut up, and it's like it occludes most of it, but it's this little paragraph, and it's like the detective walks in and sees his partner cut up or whatever, lying flat on the floor with his legs sticking out of the elevator. And that's exactly how he's left too in that scene.
Oh yeah, I missed that.
Kind of contrived, like she had all this shit framed up perfectly, like the way she was going to do it, because that's before he gets killed, and that's what triggers him because like he's sitting in the car because he's on his like 2-week psych vacation, like where he can't be a cop. He had to turn in his gun and badge, but he's still going along with Gus, and he's just watching the apartment or whatever. And it's like he forgets about seeing that printout, but then once he sees the elevator moving up, he calls back to that paragraph where he sees like partner found in elevator, and then he runs out. He's like, Gus! It's like, dude, no one can fucking hear you. He's on like the 3rd floor across the street. So then he starts booking it, sweating like a madman, trying to get up, and then his partner gets killed in the stairwell, just the way it was. They do foreshadow that. It's not a blink and you miss it, but it's pretty quick. Yeah,
I could have fallen asleep briefly. That could have been the reason why. One other thing that I thought would have been cool if Beth was the actual killer and Sharon Stone had nothing to do with it. The death of her parents, instead of attributing that to her, there was that detail when they were talking about the fuel line or whatever that had been repaired twice before. Right. I thought, that might be interesting. Like, well, no, it wasn't a murder. It was just an issue that had happened twice before, and so it just happened again. So she didn't do anything wrong. So I just didn't really like at the very end where they're like, "Oh yeah, it was this chick that we've been telling you it was all along, and we've been trying to deflect you the entire time." But nope, it was her.
Yeah,
but it was close enough for government work.
Fuck, I love that guy.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of ties this whole thing up. Nick is basically left for dead, and I guess the director and the writer have both come out like it wasn't a huge secret. They were like, "Oh yeah, Sharon Stone's the killer." They're like, they even go out as far to say is like, it's clearly evidence that it was her at the very first scene, the blonde woman stabbing whoever, Johnny Boz at the beginning, and I'm like, that could be anybody though. It's like, yeah, she has blonde hair and maybe similar build and features, but you know.
Yeah, I was trying to do some serious tit analysis because when Sharon Stone gets naked later, I didn't think they looked the same. But then when Beth gets naked, I didn't think those looked the same either. That's kind of why I thought it was Rocky, because it was a blonde woman.
Huh.
I thought the tits looked different, but I don't know.
Well, I guess, piece of trivia, there were no stunt body doubles for this film. They were all depicted as the actual actors in the film, all the nude scenes. The only corollary to that is they did add the genital pads or whatever.
Or so they say.
During the main sex scenes, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, that's it then for old Basic Instinct. So that's a no-go for Steve.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick in the no.
I'm gonna give it a solid no. Okay.
Go to bed, you sons of bitches.
I kind of ran through most of the trivia as we went through. Out of the two, who would you rather bang? Dr. Garner or Sharon Stone?
It's an interesting question. I think Dr. Garner is a better actress, so I respect it. Sharon Stone seems very wacky as shit, so
She's probably a tiger in the sack.
yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things to consider.
I'm going
with Roxy.
Oh, okay. The third alternative.
Yeah.
Sydney, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
Yeah, she was pretty hot too. I would go, if it's just the two though, I would go Dr. Garner. I'm much more of a brunette guy than a blonde. It just seems like dime a dozen. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could say the same either way, but just something about her I think is more pleasing to the eye.
Well, it's probably because she's a better actor, and Sharon Stone was pretty abysmal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird how this catapulted her, and then she didn't really go on to anything later. They actually made a sequel to this film, believe it or not. Basic Instinct 2. Yeah, in like 2006.
23 years later?
No. What's 92 and 2006?
Or 16 years later?
Yeah.
Why?
Yep. I don't know.
Have you
That's
seen
one
it?
thing I've always... Nope. Because I heard it bombed. I've heard it's garbage. It's terrible. But I was like, I don't want that to because I like Basic Instinct. And I was like, I don't want that to sully this because I like this as a self-contained, this is the story. I don't want to find out what happens to Catherine Trammell 15 years later, still killing folks with ice picks. So yeah, it's weird that this one got a sequel. And that's kind of a hallmark of this director too, which is interesting. He has the interesting factoid of he has directed the first movie in films which later went on to become a franchise that he had no involvement with, and they all subsequently bombed really hard and or were just direct to DVD or direct to video style movies. So with the small caveat is RoboCop 2 did okay, and I can't remember if he directed that too, but RoboCop 3 was garb. So then he did Starship Troopers, which the first one's awesome. I think they've gone on to make 3 or 4, and they're real bad. They're terrible. And then Basic Instinct 2. I think there's a couple others that I'm not remembering, but I thought that was kind of an interesting, kind of dubious distinction for this director. But yeah, he's an interesting kind of oddball dude. I'm a big fan of Starship Troopers though. That's what I most closely, that and RoboCop, the first one, are both pretty badass. Have you ever seen Starship Troopers?
Seen Starship Troopers, never seen RoboCop.
Oh man, dude, Red from that 70s show,
yeah,
plays the main bad guy in RoboCop. It's pretty awesome. It's dope. It's very gory. It's a lot of fun.
You had me at very gory.
And Red, it's weird to see him because he's a lot younger and he's fucking cursing up like a sailor, and he's blowing people's heads off and shit. It's a weird, because I only ever knew him as Red, dumbass, that kind of character. And then to see him as a drug running fucking head of a Detroit cartel in the future, he's just fucking a maniac. It's pretty fun to see him in that role. But do you have any fun anecdotes, colloquialisms before we get into a bit of housekeeping and call it a day?
No, I do not.
All right. I don't have anything either. Although there is a piece of slang that I'm hearing right now I've heard Washed before, and I've kind of taken a shine to that a little bit. But I'm starting to see. I'm probably late on this as per usual, but I'm seeing Rinsed being used a lot right now. Like if someone gets washed or like fucked up or like obliterated or just like he just gets, oh man, he got rinsed. Or he just got crossed up, posterized like in a basketball game, or just like thrown around like a dummy on the football field.
Ragdolled.
Just got rinsed. Little boy. Is there any key updates or anything of note since we just did the Alex Murdaugh coverage? Is there anything you wanted to talk about on that front? If not, that's fine too.
No, mostly because I think this is a little out of order.
Yeah, when we release this, it'll be in a funky time period, but I guess at least now while we're talking, not too much has happened that's kind of meaningful.
Yeah, I think we'll probably save it for the second ep.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if there was just like anything like any bombshell kind of stuff that has happened in the past few days since we last talked, but alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for us for this week, covering Basic Instinct. If you guys have any thoughts, want to let us know what you thought of this film or anything else in general, you can reach out to us via email at wax@waxingtheporpoise.com, or either of our socials. Instagram is waxingtheporpoise, or at Twitter is at waxingtheporp. You got any final thoughts on this film or anything else?
No.
You got top of mind?
So. No.
Oh shit, I almost forgot. I was slacking on that. That could have probably fit in somewhere much better right when we started talking about the first sex scene. Which, by the way, dude, like the back getting clawed up, that part was intense. Like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I've never had that happen to me, but I can't imagine it would be like something that would like amp me up. Like I feel like that would take me out of the game a little bit. Like if you're drawing blood and I have like sores on my back now. But it was, what do you say? It was the fuck of the century.
Yeah.
Fucking pompous ass. Alrighty. So yeah, next time, I don't know, we're leaving it open-ended, so I don't know what we're going to be talking about, but hope you enjoyed the film. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate all the good feedback. We had a lot of people give you kudos on your legal law courtroom acumen, Steve Dogg, in the Alex Murdaugh trial. I agree too. That's definitely like your forte. Like, you know, like the shit you were talking about, like that goes right before reasonable doubt, like those, like all that kind of stuff. The inner workings is super interesting. That doesn't really get divulged when you're just like watching the boob tube and like waiting for the latest drama, you know. Or maybe they do go into that kind of stuff. I don't have the patience for a lot of that. But yeah, people are psyched about your
sweet,
your legal articulation.
Don't listen to me. Yeah, I'm dumb.
Don't do that. Yeah, more to come on that once the trial takes shape and more stuff comes out. We'll definitely have to flash back to that. But yeah, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thanks, gang.
You bitch all night!